I first realized I was invisible on my 14th birthday. The calendar on our kitchen wall, a floral print thing my mother had hung with such care, displayed everyone's special days in her looping handwriting. My father's name circled in March, my younger sister's highlighted in pink for July, my older brother's marked with a star for October. But February 18th remained blank, an ordinary square in an ordinary month. I stood there in my pajamas, marker in hand, hesitating. If I wrote my own name down, would that make it more pathetic? The question has haunted me for 12 years now. Growing up in the middle was like existing in negative space. My older brother was the firstborn, the golden child who carried all my parents' dreams and expectations. My sister came 8 years after me, a surprise blessing, the baby who would never grow up in their eyes. And then there was me, not the first, not the last, not the only girl, not the only boy. Just there, taking up space between landmarks. I've spent years watching patterns unfold like origami, each crease deliberate and sharp. The way my mother's eyes light up when my brother walks through the door, how she still keeps a box of his childhood drawings in the attic, but couldn't tell you what my favorite color was in 3rd grade. The way my father champions my little sister's every achievement, from her first steps to her high school graduation speech, while my college acceptance letter was met with a distracted, "That's nice, honey," over his morning newspaper. It wasn't like they were cruel. That's the insidious thing about invisibility. It's not an act of aggression, but an absence of attention. A gentle overlooking, repeated so consistently, it becomes the wallpaper of your existence. Sometimes I'd convince myself I was imagining things, that my perception was warped by insecurity. But then another birthday would pass with a hasty day of card, while my siblings received weeks of excited planning. Another holiday would end with stories about that time your brother or when your sister was little, with no anecdote starring me. I started collecting evidence like a private investigator of my own life. The family photos where I'm positioned slightly off-center or partially cropped out. The way my mother calls my brother first with big news. The childhood stories my parents retell that somehow never feature me as the main character. The family vacations planned around everyone else's schedule but mine. By 18, I'd constructed an entire identity around being overlooked. I became the self-sufficient one, the one who never asked for help, the one who prided herself on emotional independence. I learned to need nothing, to expect nothing, to want nothing from them. It was safer that way. You can't be disappointed when you've trained yourself not to hope. College was my escape hatch, a chance to reconstruct myself from the ground up. I chose a university 3 states away, far enough that visits home would be occasional rather than expected. My roommate was the first person who seemed genuinely interested in knowing me, my thoughts, my dreams, my weird habits and secret fears. She noticed when I was quiet and asked why. She remembered my birthday without prompting. She introduced me to friends as my amazing roommate who, followed by some compliment that would make me blush. "Why do you look so surprised when people pay attention to you?" she asked once, lounging across her bed while I studied at my desk. The question struck me like a physical blow. I hadn't realized my reactions were so transparent, that years of emotional neglect had manifested in visible discomfort with basic human consideration. I deflected with a joke, but the question burrowed under my skin and stayed there. In those years away, I built a life that felt solid. Friends who texted just to check in. Professors who knew my name and commented thoughtfully on my work. A part-time job where my boss praised my reliability. A boyfriend who listened when I spoke, who noticed my new haircuts and remembered my coffee order, and bought small gifts just because it reminded me of you. Home became a place I visited rather than belonged to. Each return was an exercise in emotional time travel, watching myself shrink back into the middle child, the forgotten one, the girl who learned to speak softly because no one was listening anyway. I'd sit at the dinner table while conversation flowed around me like I was a rock in a stream, creating small eddies of acknowledgement before returning to its natural course between my more interesting family members. "How's school?" my father would ask exactly once, barely looking up from his plate. "Fine," I'd answer, knowing there would be no follow-up questions. Meanwhile, my brother's career moves warranted half-hour discussions. My sister's teenage social drama commanded rapt attention. I'd watch my mother's face as she listened to them. Really listened, with an engagement she never seemed to muster for me. I told myself it didn't hurt anymore. I was an adult with my own life, my own chosen family of friends who saw me clearly. I didn't need their validation. But every visit left me hollow, a child again, wondering what fundamental flaw made me so easy to overlook. The medical bills came first, then the diagnosis. Nothing dramatically life-threatening, just expensive, painful, and chronic enough to derail my carefully constructed independence. My apartment lease ended. My boyfriend, who had seemed so steady, started finding reasons to be elsewhere as my health issues complicated our previously carefree relationship. My savings dwindled with alarming speed. Moving back home at 22 felt like the ultimate failure, a regression to a space where I'd never fully existed to begin with. My childhood bedroom had been partially converted to storage in my absence, boxes of holiday decorations stacked in corners, my sister's overflow clothes hanging in my closet. It took 3 requests before my mother cleared enough space for me to fully unpack. "It's just temporary," I repeated like a mantra during those first weeks. Just until the medical bills were manageable. Just until I could work full-time again. Just until I remembered how to breathe under the weight of their selective attention. The calendar still hung in the kitchen, my mother's handwriting documenting the rhythm of family life. I watched her update it each month, noting my father's doctor appointments, my sister's school events, my brother's visits home. I waited to see if February would be different now that I lived under their roof again. It wasn't. My birthday arrived with the usual last-minute scramble. A hasty card, a gift that suggested no real thought about who I'd become in the years away. "We've been so busy," my mother said, not meeting my eyes. I nodded and smiled and said it was fine. What else could I do? Point out that they'd managed to plan my brother's birthday dinner 2 months in advance? Mention that my sister's birthday warranted new decorations and a special cake order? That night, alone in my half-storage room, surrounded by cardboard boxes of Christmas ornaments and old tax returns, something inside me finally broke. Not dramatically, not with screams or sobs, but quietly, the way ignored things tend to break. A small internal collapse that felt both monumental and entirely private. I curled into myself on my childhood bed and allowed the truth I'd been running from for years to finally catch up with me. I was the afterthought child, the one easily forgotten, the one whose absence created no particular void. In that moment of brutal clarity, I felt an odd sense of peace wash over me. The mystery was solved. The question that had haunted me since childhood, "What's wrong with me?" had its answer. Nothing. Nothing was wrong with me. I was simply unseen by the people who should have seen me most clearly. Recovery started small. I began with the calendar, writing my own name on my birthday square in permanent marker. Not asking permission, not making an announcement. Just claiming that small space is mine. When my mother noticed, she said nothing, but I caught the flicker of something. Surprise? Guilt? Across her face. Next came boundaries. I stopped making myself constantly available for family needs while receiving nothing in return. I declined to babysit my sister at the last minute so my parents could attend impromptu dinner parties. I stopped dropping everything when my brother called with his latest crisis. I began treating myself with the consideration they never showed me. "You seem different," my father commented one evening, actually looking at me over dinner. "I'm the same," I replied. "I'm just not pretending anymore." The most surprising discovery was how family dynamics calcify into place through mutual participation. For years, I'd played my assigned role, the self-sufficient middle child who needed nothing and expected less. I had made it easy for them to overlook me by anticipating and accepting their neglect. By changing my behavior, I forced small shifts in theirs. My monthly therapy sessions became my sanctuary. "You can't change other people," my therapist reminded me. "You can only change how you respond to them." I wrote this on a sticky note and placed it on my bedroom mirror, a daily reminder that while I couldn't control their perception, I could control my reaction to it. I started speaking up at family dinners, not apologetically, but with the quiet confidence of someone who deserves to be heard. Sometimes they listened. Sometimes they didn't. I learned to continue regardless, to value my own voice, even when others failed to recognize its worth. The hardest lesson was learning that their oversight wasn't necessarily malicious. During one particularly raw therapy session, I finally confronted the possibility that my parents simply didn't know how to connect with me. Perhaps my personality had always been more complex, less immediately readable than my siblings. Maybe my independence, cultivated as a defense mechanism, had been misinterpreted as disinterest in family closeness. "Have you ever directly told them how you feel?" my therapist asked. I hadn't. Years of collecting evidence, building my case in silence, never actually presenting it to the accused. The thought of such vulnerability terrified me. What if I laid my heart bare only to have them dismiss my experience entirely? What if my pain meant nothing to them? Worse still, what if they hadn't even noticed enough to deny it? The conversation happened on an ordinary Tuesday evening. My mother was chopping vegetables for dinner while I sat at the kitchen counter, supposedly reading but actually gathering courage. Outside, spring rain tapped gently against the windows, creating a soothing background rhythm for the most difficult words I'd ever spoken. "Mom," I began, my voice steadier than I felt. "I need to talk to you about something that's been hurting me for a long time." Her hand stilled on the cutting board, but she didn't turn around immediately. When she finally did, her expression was guarded. "What is it?" I felt invisible in this family for as long as I can remember. The words hung between us, heavier than I'd anticipated. Like an afterthought. Like someone who doesn't quite matter as much as everyone else. Her instinctive denial came quickly. "That's not true. We love all our children equally." "I'm not questioning your love," I clarified, determined to stay focused. "I'm telling you about my experience growing up in this house. About birthdays forgotten while others are celebrated. About conversations where I might as well not be in the room. About family photos where I'm literally cropped out." I showed her the evidence I'd collected over years, digital photos where I was positioned at the edge, easy to crop. Social media posts celebrating my siblings' achievements while mine went unmentioned. The family calendar where my significant dates were consistently absent while everyone else's were recorded. "I didn't," she began, then stopped. "I never meant to make you feel that way. I know," I said, "and I meant it. But you did. All of you did. And I need you to understand that it hurt me. It's still hurting me." What followed wasn't the dramatic reconciliation scene from a movie. There were no immediate tears or profound apologies or transformative hugs. Instead, there was something rarer. Silence. Real silence, not the dismissive kind, but the listening kind. My mother sat across from me, really looking at me perhaps for the first time in years, letting my words sink into the space between us. "I don't know what to say," she finally admitted. "You don't have to say anything right now," I told her. "Just please think about it. Try to see our family from where I'm standing." Later that night, my father knocked on my bedroom door. My mother had spoken to him, he said. He sat awkwardly on the edge of my bed. This man who had always seemed so confident in every other context. "I think we failed you," he said simply. "Not intentionally. But that doesn't matter, does it? The impact matters more than the intent." It wasn't everything. It wasn't an immediate solution, or a guarantee that patterns established over decades would magically transform. But it was acknowledgement. It was the beginning of being seen. Change came slowly, imperfectly, with steps forward and inevitable slides backward. There were still family dinners, where I felt sidelined, still occasions where old patterns reasserted themselves. But there were also new moments, my mother asking specifically about my physical therapy progress, my father sending articles related to my interests, small acknowledgments that I existed as a full person in their consciousness. The calendar in the kitchen now includes my appointments, my achievements, my birthday, written in the same looping script as everyone else's important dates. It's a small thing, perhaps trivial to anyone else, but to me it represents a visible shift in the family ecosystem. More profound was the gradual recalibration of my internal landscape. For so long I'd defined myself in relation to their oversight. I was the forgotten one, the invisible middle child, the family ghost. As they began to see me more clearly, I faced an unexpected identity crisis. Who was I beyond my carefully cultivated self-sufficiency? What did I want when I allowed myself to want things? My therapist called this reclaiming your narrative. "For years your story has been about what you didn't receive," she explained. "What happens when you start writing a story about what you're creating instead?" This question became my North Star in the months that followed. I started small, identifying preferences I'd suppressed in my determination to need nothing. Favorite foods I'd never mentioned because it was easier to eat whatever everyone else wanted. Music I loved but kept to headphones because I assumed no one would care to hear it. Dreams I'd never articulated because invisible girls don't get to take up that kind of space. I began bringing these hidden pieces of myself into the light, not defiantly but matter-of-factly. This is who I am. This is what I like. This is what matters to me. Sometimes my family responded with interest. Sometimes they didn't. I learned that their reaction didn't determine the validity of my preferences or the reality of my existence. The most surprising lesson came 6 months after moving back home. when my brother visited for the weekend. We'd never been particularly close. The gap in our ages and his position as the golden child had created a distance that seemed unbridgeable. But something had shifted in the family's tectonic plates, and he approached me differently this time. "I've been thinking about what Mom told me," he said, as we sat on the back porch one evening. "About how you felt growing up. I'm sorry if I contributed to that." His apology caught me off guard. I'd been so focused on my parents' role and my invisibility that I'd never considered how my siblings might have unintentionally reinforced it. "I think I always saw you as the strong one," he continued. "The one who had it all together, who didn't need the attention or help that I always seemed to." I laughed, a sound caught between bitterness and genuine amusement. "I wasn't strong. I just learned that needing things was pointless when no one was paying attention to what I needed." He nodded slowly. "That makes sense. Still, I should have seen it. I'm your brother." That conversation didn't instantly transform our relationship, but it opened a door that had been closed for decades. We started texting occasionally. Nothing profound, just check-ins and updates, and the odd meme that made one of us think of the other. Small acknowledgments of connection that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. I moved out again last month, not fleeing this time but advancing toward a future I thoughtfully constructed. My health has improved enough to work full-time. My savings have recovered. Most importantly, I've recovered a sense of self that exists independently of my family's perception. My new apartment is small but entirely mine. I've decorated with intention, surrounding myself with colors and textures that bring me joy. On my refrigerator hangs a calendar where I note appointments, social events, and personal achievements, a practice I've reclaimed from my childhood, hurt, and transformed into a celebration of my fully visible life. My relationship with my family has reached a new equilibrium. Not perfect, not completely healed, but honest, in a way it never was before. We speak more directly now. I've learned to ask for what I need instead of silently tracking its absence. They've learned to see me more clearly, though old habits sometimes resurface on both sides. On my last night at home, my mother knocked on my bedroom door, holding something behind her back. "I found this while cleaning out the attic," she said, handing me a small, worn notebook with my name written on the cover in childish handwriting. I opened it to find poems and drawings from my 10-year-old self, pages filled with the thoughts and dreams of a girl trying to make sense of her place in the world. "I kept it all these years," she said quietly. "I did notice you even when it didn't seem like it. Not enough, not the way you deserved. But you were never actually invisible to me. I didn't know what to say." This small evidence that some part of me had been preserved in her consciousness all along didn't erase the years of feeling overlooked, but it complicated my narrative in ways that felt important. "Thank you for showing me now," I finally said. She nodded, understanding the layers in my response. "Here's what I've learned about invisibility. It's rarely complete. Even in my years of feeling utterly unseen, there were moments when light broke through, when someone, a teacher, a friend, occasionally even a family member, truly saw me. I was collecting evidence of oversight while ignoring evidence to the contrary, building a case that reinforced my deepest fears. This doesn't excuse the patterns that hurt me. My pain was real. The oversight was real. But healing has come from recognizing the complexity of human attention, the imperfection of family love, and my own power to step out of the shadows I sometimes chose to inhabit. I am neither the forgotten middle child nor the perfectly seen daughter. I exist in the complicated space between those extremes, claiming my right to be flawed and whole, and sometimes overlooked and still fundamentally worthy of attention. Tomorrow is my birthday. My phone has been buzzing with early well wishes from friends who now form the chosen family of my adult life. My calendar square is marked in my own handwriting, not a desperate plea for recognition, but a simple acknowledgement of my place in the timeline of my own life. My mother called yesterday to confirm dinner plans for the celebration. Not a last-minute arrangement, but something planned weeks in advance. A small step. An imperfect offering. A recognition that some wounds heal slowly, with attention and care, and the gradual rebuilding of trust. I am learning to occupy space without apology. To speak at normal volume rather than trained silence. To believe that my thoughts and feelings deserve expression not because others consistently validate them, but because they are mine. The middle child. The space between. Not invisible after all, but present and solid and increasingly at peace with the complicated legacy of being overlooked and the hard-won gift of finally seeing myself clearly, even when others don't.